All of us real estate agents, we're all seeing the exact same thing. A lot of our peers in our industry are getting out of the business and going back to 9-to-5 jobs. And part of that is because of the economy. And what we're seeing is that most of those folks that are going back to full-time work, they're not listing agents. They're agents that are focused more on buyers. And when you combine that with the pending lawsuits, with buyer agent commission and who's paying that, there's so much uncertainty. It's more important now than it ever has been to make sure that we are all very skilled on being listing agents. If you want to learn how to do that and save your business from failure, we're going to help you do that in today's episode. We're going to talk about how to win more listings. Welcome to the How to Real Estate podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Jeremy Smith, and this is Kyle Lindsay. Good morning, Kyle.
Good morning, Jeremy.
How are you, brother?
Man, I'm doing great today.
How has your week been?
This has been a pretty good and eventful week. Had a power outage at the one of my listings during the inspection. I had to scramble to help take care of that. But, overall, very good week.
Yeah, I'm sure our listeners have probably experienced that a time or two. You know, that surprise, oh, there's no water on. Sorry, right. We can't test the water heater. We can't test the AC.
Yeah.
So did they get it on or did they have to come back?
No, they actually got it on. We called the power company and was able to last minute to get it on while they were still there. So it all worked out just fine. But nothing like a last minute fire drill when you're on your way somewhere else.
Man, you ain't lying, man. I had some clients close this week. There was a remote thing. It's the first time I have ever dealt with the ladybird deed, right? So the mom took care of the kids. You know, she had a ladybird deed. And so unfortunately she passed away. And it deeded over to the son, through this ladybird deed. There was no probate or anything like that, which is really awesome. Very, very easy on them. But the house is here in Arlington, and the sellers live they live in a border town in West Texas, so they're quite a ways away. So there was a lot of logistics going into that and how to get them signed because they kind of both do very involved jobs, so it's hard to get them on the same schedule to sign. So we actually got them all signed up. They did a mobile notary and they signed at like 8 p.m. last night.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I'm grateful for that experience, man. I love learning new things, even though I've been in the business for this amount of time and seen a lot of stuff. We're always learning new stuff.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, tying back into the theme of this episode, I'm really grateful for coaching. Yeah. So it's, and I'll get to how it ties back in a second, but, I think it is underestimated especially by a lot of new agents or people that have never experienced coaching, and they discount it as a guru thing or a waste of money. And what are they going to tell me? But, I got a coach a couple years ago, paid him a decent amount of money and taught me a lot. But one of the things that he really pushed was listings. And I need to become a listing agent. And if I hadn't gotten to that coach, I would not have developed a skill set and I would not have been where I am today, starting that journey into becoming a listing agent. And it has set up my career so much better than if I had just stayed focused on buyers.
Man, that is gold right there. I actually had the same experience. I also got a coach and learned to do listings and just think about how much longer it would have taken without a coach.
Oh, man. I mean, and I don't use a lot of what he gave me anymore because I've through the years had different coaches and found my own style.
Right.
But if I hadn't had that initial spark, I would not have been nearly as successful and had the opportunity to develop my own style. Yeah. Because I wouldn't have won as many listings.
Yeah. It's invaluable, man. And it is unfortunate that a majority of the industry doesn't see the value in coaching. And I don't know, maybe if it's because they know they're not going to do it. So they're like, yeah, I don't want to pay this money because I know I'm not going to do what they tell me, and we'll talk about why that happens. But they definitely need to get, everybody needs a coach, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You need coaching, you need training. And one thing that we talked about is we're going to create an episode on the 5 easiest ways to get listings, right? Yes. So I'm excited for that one because a lot of our listeners are newer agents, and they don't have a huge budget. So we're going to give you guys some tips on how to get listings without breaking your budget. A lot of it's going to come without even spending any money. A lot of it's free things that you can do to go out there and nail more listings.
100%. Yeah, I'm excited for that because this episode is more about once you have the lead, how do you convert it into a client?
Yeah.
And I am also looking forward to the episode where we can actually give some tactical advice on, because that's one of the biggest things we always hear from new agents or agents in all walks, really. How do I get more leads?
Yeah. So if you guys are listening and that's of interest to you, definitely hit subscribe so that you get notified when we do release that. This is actually episode number 4, right? Podcast episode number 4. But Kyle, why should somebody focus on listings? Why are they so critical to our business?
Money.
Boom.
All right, that's it. Drop the mic. Episode over. No, becoming a listing agent is one. It is, for the most part, it's a sure sale.
Yeah.
So when a listing goes live, that person is going to sell their house. Now, obviously, expires and cancels are a thing, so it's not 100% guaranteed. But if you can execute it properly, you have a client who's going to sell their home. It is a much higher closing percentage than a buyer. We all have worked with those flaky buyers who take you on 40 different showings and end up changing their mind and not actually doing anything.
Right.
Listings, that can happen, but it's a much, much lower percentage. So one is, I would say, in your pocketbook, money in your pocketbook basically is reason number one. But two, and I know you can speak to this, but listings generate more business than buyers do.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because you get a sign in the yard that people may call you on, right? And those are good leads. You have open house opportunities at your discretion. You gain brand awareness in the community by people just driving by your sign. You can run ads for that thing. I mean, you can leverage. That was one of my notes here is leverage. You can leverage a listing to increase your pipeline. And you really, it's hard. It's much harder to do that on the buy side. You kind of have to rely on the buyer really to give you referrals. Where on the listing, you can really leverage that a lot more.
Yeah, listings, buyers don't generate a ton of secondary business unless through your referral network, which is hopefully a buyer will eventually turn into a listing down the road.
Right.
But that's a long-term plan. You need to be able to survive your first 5 years in the business, which we know 87% of agents don't.
Right.
To ever get to the point where someone that you sold a house to is going to end up listing a house. So
Right.
listings will generate more brand awareness. They'll generate buyers. If you're doing it right, they'll generate more listings.
Yeah.
So it is the best way to actually build a sustainable business is through listings.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you also have more control of your time, with listings. Kind of getting to your point with the money is like when you break down the hours that you spend with a buyer, and let's just say, you close the buyer, you close the listing, and you spent the exact same amount of time. Well, not the exact same amount of time, but you made the same amount of money, right? And then you dissected how much time you spent with your buyers showing properties, running CMAs, writing offers, home inspections, like all the things that are involved. Like your return per hour is much higher with listings.
Yes.
Your time investment's a lot less.
And going back, this could be a whole nother podcast topic, but you can leverage listing activities much easier than you can leverage buyer activities. Like you could have an admin or a listing coordinator handle most of your back end listing work.
Right.
Whereas with a buyer's agent, it's much harder. You have to, paying another agent to open the doors for you is a much more expensive activity than it is on the listing side. So we don't want to go too deep into that today, but it's a lot easier to make more money with listing. Hopefully that's become clear in the last couple minutes of us rambling.
Yeah, I think so. And the last thing here, why are listings important before we get to the 3 steps of the listing, is the perception, right? Perception is reality. And as we build businesses, the best thing we can do is be perceived as professional and skillful and, all of the good things that the real estate industry tends to not be known for.
Yes.
Right. And so the best way to do that is as a listing agent, because you're in control in most cases. You're in control of the process.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big one too, that perception that it creates.
I agree. Unless you can land yourself an HGTV show where you're showing buyers the 3 properties and they have to choose one, it's a lot harder to become a much more successful buyer's agent.
Right. Absolutely, man. Well, now you guys understand why listings are important. I'm sure there's things that you guys are hearing this, you're thinking of that we missed. go ahead and post them in the comments. Let us know why else it is important to be a listing agent, because that is not an exhaustive list. But now let's go into the steps. So what should people be considering to do before they even, or what should they consider before they ever even contact somebody who they're planning or trying to win their listing?
This builds perfectly from your last point, is perception is reality. And in today's digital age, if you think that people aren't Googling you, you are mistaken.
Oh, yeah.
Right now, I think baby boomers have taken over as our largest buying pool at the moment, but it's really neck and neck with the millennials.
Yeah.
And millennials will Google you. I mean, a lot of baby boomers will too, but you were being Googled. People are finding you on the internet. You're being looked up on social media.
Yeah.
So really the first thing you need to think about is controlling the narrative and your perception. And in order to do that, you need to present as a listing agent.
Right. So what does that look like?
Step one to controlling the narrative when you are trying to present as a listing agent is really just posting about listings on social media. Now, this can be a Facebook post, Instagram post, whatever, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be your listing. And I think that's the biggest hang up is people say, I don't have any listings. Well, you should be part of a brokerage that does.
Right.
And as anyone that knows in the industry, you don't own your listings. That's an agreement with your broker. So you can use those listings. Now, I would recommend reaching out to the actual listing agent, getting permission. But I mean, to be really frank, you don't need it. Your broker owns the listing, not that agent.
Right.
It's a professional courtesy, and I would recommend doing it. So step one is life cycle posts. I know you use these quite a bit when you were building your listing brand. So what does that look like?
A concern for me was always remaining professional. You know, like people seeing that I'm active in real estate, I'm knowledgeable in real estate, and there's nothing on my page or any of my social media platforms that's divisive. You know, so that was pretty much my bread and butter. You know, and posting content that is educational. You know, because the more you educate people, the more the perception is that you're knowledgeable because you're obviously educating people, right? And you're confident enough to put it out there for the world to see.
Right.
That was really my strategy. Hey, let me post an equal amount of business stuff, personal stuff, and then make sure that the content is professional. And that doesn't have to be professionally recorded, right? But I shouldn't look disheveled. You know, I shouldn't probably be using a bunch of cuss words like I do in the podcast. You know, and then again, not being divisive, not posting political or any content that's controversial.
Yeah, 100%. I know there's a lot of theories and best practices about social media, but I would echo that and really boil it down to 4 pillars of social media content. One is educational, so that the more you can educate your followers, the more like an authority you're going to seem. Step 2 is what I alluded to earlier, the life cycle post of a listing. So coming soon, new listing, under contract, for sale.
Absolutely.
Each of those could be, every time you get a listing or you want to pick a certain listing, there's 4 posts built in right there. And you can repeat those as you need to, because, honestly, people don't catch that. How many people of your followers might see a certain post? 10%.
Right.
So you could post that over and over again. And some people might see it a couple times, but most people won't recognize that's the same listing.
Right.
Step 3, I think it's kind of educational, but like market trends. I think the more you can seem like you are following the market and really on top of things, and this could just be a repost from your MLS board.
Right.
A lot of them put out great content on the market stats. You can just repurpose that, put it out there with your own spin on it, and seem like a market expert. And then 4, you alluded to as well as personal stuff. People do want to connect with you personally.
Yes.
And I think if you can just do that, I know that seems like a lot right there, but those things, when people Google you or they look on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, if they see that alone, you're already going to be way ahead of the game.
Absolutely. And I think that it's important to connect with the fact that you're running a business now, right? So your life has to change a little bit. Like you have to. You're running a public service business, right? Where information is free. People are going to, like I said, look you up, and you want them to see, you, an extension of your business, see you as a person and a business person. So look at your social media accounts like as an extension of your business website, and always be said and putting your best foot forward, so people see that.
100%.
what should these agents be considering before they even go on the appointment? So they've got a lead, and the lead's Googling them,
Right.
and while they're getting Googled, they should be preparing, right? So what should they be doing before they even get to the appointment?
Well, so we're kind of talking right now about that in between, someone just noticing you online, or maybe someone has said, oh, you should talk about, you should hire Kyle Lindsay, or you should hire Jeremy Smith, and they start Googling you. Then we're talking about the initial contact. And I think this is where you need to be prepared.
Right.
You need to have a process in place.
Yes.
What does that look like? What does that first conversation look like? What information do you need from that person to go from initial contact into listing appointment? And that is a whole series of steps that you need to really think about, get coached on, master. What does that conversation look like, and what do you need from that person? And what do you need to convey to them as an authoritative professional? Like, I know what I'm doing. I have a process. Let's meet and talk about your listing. Because really the goal of that first initial contact is yes, to get some information, but it's really to set the appointment. You need to get out in front of them at the house.
Yeah. What sort of things would you recommend an agent do, or processes that they should have in place that they can implement at this stage?
So one is the initial conversation. I guess we'll call it a template.
Gotcha.
The information you're really looking for, or what I look for, is property based, because it's a really easy. If someone's calling you about a listing, you're trying to build trust, and the first way to do that is to ask about the property. So, age of the property, you're confirming public information. So I always go to the tax records and I look up the property, or maybe the last MLS listing if it's in the MLS, and you confirm all the property facts you need. Have they done any work since they moved in? The age of the property, the actual size, bedroom, bathrooms, square footage, any problems with the property. And once you move into that, that's when you can start talking about more personal topics, about motivation, situation they're in. What are they looking for? Where do they have somewhere to go? And then another, a ninja hack here. It doesn't sound like it, but most agents don't do this. Are they talking to any other agents?
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah, and it gets left off a lot of conversations. You just assume going in that you might be the only agent, because a lot of times you are, but then you get blindsided at the appointment. Okay, cool, great. We got to talk to 2 more agents.
Right.
Teaser later maybe for, which agent should you be in that order?
Right, exactly.
Do you want to be the first or the last?
And when I coach and train agents, I always tell them, like, just assume that you are competing. Never go into even if it's a friend or a family member, like, never go into that appointment thinking you got it.
Yeah.
Always go in there, guns blazing. You're competing, right?
Yes.
That should always be the assumption there. And then also, part of that preparation on what you're going to do before you have the listing, it's as silly as, like, knowing what you're going to wear. You know what I'm saying? Like, knowing what documents you need to have with you, knowing what approach, using, like, to your point, using things like SPIN, like situation, problem, implication, and needs.
Yes.
Right? Okay, well, what's their situation? What's their AKA motivation? Right? What problem can you come in and solve for them? What happens if they don't get that problem solved? And what are their needs? And if you can get that information prior to going on the appointment, you're going to be armed with everything that you need to really deliver a killer presentation and look like an expert.
Yeah. One of the best coaches I spoke to through learning all about listings was really winning the listing before you even get there.
Yeah.
The presentation can most of the time seal the deal, but really, if you set yourself up right through this initial conversation and then your follow-up before the appointment, that's where you really convert the listing right there. Because by the time you get there, they're already impressed.
Yeah.
Because you've already done more than any other agent they've ever spoken to.
Absolutely. I remember recently you sent your pre-listing email to a client, and that was pretty much the response, right? It was like, oh, wow, that was really good. Like, I've never seen an agent do that before. My mind was made up when I got this email.
Yeah.
Before you even met him in person.
Yeah. So that's the process, is you have that conversation, you dig in as deep as you can. Normally for me, those are 15 to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And really, it's really focused on building trust and getting the information I need to deliver not only a great appointment, but that great pre-listing email
Right.
where you speak to a few more of those pain points, but you're sending them ahead of time. You're sending them your CMA. I know that scares the hell out of some agents just hearing that.
Right.
You send them your CMA, you're sending them your property marketing plan, and you are sending, some other good information, some questionnaires, things like that, all up front.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would even add on to that if you're daring enough, send them a video too. Like, hey, you can use BombBomb. There's so many different things that you can use and say, hey, here's the information I've attached. Look through it. I'm excited to meet you guys. Now they get to put a face, with the voice if they haven't seen you in person before. And love that, man. Just very thorough, very thorough. And the thing is, you guys, like, have you ever heard this saying, like, if you're getting chased by zombies, you don't got to be the fastest one. You don't be the slowest.
Right.
Right. So it's a similar concept with these emails or with this process is like, it doesn't have to be perfect, but you're going to be putting yourself so far ahead of your competition because most people aren't going to this extent that they are the slowest. You're really competing with 87% of the slowest.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's really amazing how many times I show up and I'm asking questions about the other agents I'm competing against. They didn't have an initial conversation, so they didn't confirm the home facts. They show up with incomplete data, so they didn't even really actually know how many bedrooms, bathrooms, or how to build the proper CMA because they didn't have the, how much has changed about the property since the people bought it. Did they do any upgrades? They don't know.
Right.
Then they show up. They didn't send them any information ahead of time, so they're there for 2 or 3 hours, and they're not even talking about the clients wanted to hear about. And it's amazing when you can preempt most of that, and you show up and you are presenting, and half the time I look at them and I'm like, hey, do I even need to finish this? Are you guys ready to sign?
Right.
And they're just like, yeah, let's just go.
Let's just get it done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I remember going on a listing point with you. That was pretty much it. They're like,
Yeah.
I don't have any questions. Let's go ahead and sign this thing. And so you guys, here's the thing here. Honestly, this is for people that want to, this information is for agents that want to excel and get better and better at listings.
Yeah.
Can you go and not do any of this and get listings with friends and family? Yeah, you probably could, But there's going to be a lot of heartache. There's going to be a lot of confusion. There's going to be a lack of education. And that's pretty much the extent of your business pool, right? And once your friends and family buy homes, then what?
Right.
You go wait another 3 to 5 years for them to do it again. And that's only if you did a really good job.
Right.
Right. So these skill sets are important. So let's talk about some during the listing appointment stuff. What should people be doing during the appointment?
The appointment itself, and this is where I think most agents get it wrong, is they think, again, we're talking about kind of preempting the appointment, but they think the appointment is the time to sell. The appointment, I think of it almost, and yes, I am selling during the appointment, but I think of it almost as an onboarding session.
Right.
Because the best way to sell someone and working with you is showing them what it looks like to work with you.
Exactly.
And so we use a 5-stage listing appointment. And the first step, surprisingly, is not the home tour.
Right.
So, and we don't even call it a home tour. So the first step is you come in and they will naturally maybe start trying to show you around and say, hey, before we do that, before we do the home tour, is there a place that we can actually sit down and talk about what I heard on the phone and make sure I got everything right?
Right.
And then you're going back there and you're confirming the initial appointment.
Right.
Or the initial conversation, and you're letting them talk more because you'll normally get more out of them at this point.
Exactly.
You're in their home. You've already had one conversation with them. You've sent them the pre-listing appointment email. They're already impressed with you. They're going to give you more than you thought. So that's step one is you sit down and you talk to them. Step two is now what I like to call the home inspection.
Right.
And I preempt this with saying, hey, I want to walk through your home. I want you to show me around on the home inspection. I want to look at it like a buyer would. And hey, would you give me permission or would you mind if I looked at this like a buyer's agent and maybe helped you point out some things that you might be able to improve? Right. And I also want to hear about your impressions of the property. That almost goes over so much better. It's not a home tour where you have to walk around and act like you're super impressed and, because that could work against you in a situation where they want to list more than what you want to.
Yes.
Now we flipped it and we're looking at it from a buyer's perspective, and that puts me in a lot better position to point out flaws.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I want to walk around and trash the property, but I also want permission not to have to gush over things and make them feel like the home is worth more than it is. Love it.
And one way I love asking that question is saying like, hey, would you be offended if I viewed your property from the lens of a buyer and gave you feedback in alignment with that?
Yeah. Love that.
And this, no, we wouldn't be. Of course, walk carefully, right?
Right. Again, we're not walking through and bashing everything. Like,
Yeah.
oh man, who chose this paint color?
Right. Yeah. Which one of you guys? This paint job sucks. That's too funny. Maybe thinking it, but don't say it.
Yeah, right.
Don't say it. Okay, so you came in, you kind of reestablish alignment on what their goals are, like why they're selling and all that stuff, and that builds rapport, man.
Yeah.
One thing one of my coaches told me was, be interested, don't be interesting.
Yeah.
Right. So now you're being interested. You're allowing them to talk. Hopefully you're asking really good questions, right? The better quality of questions you ask, the better quality you'll be able to serve them.
Yeah.
Right. So you've got to really ask good questions. So you're doing that. Now you're doing the inspection. And what comes after that?
Well, after the inspection is our marketing proposal. So we don't call it a listing presentation because that doesn't send the right message. So we call it a marketing proposal because what you're really trying to do, honestly, when you really break it down, is you're marketing their home.
Right.
And this is how we're going to propose to do that. And so this is what most agents would traditionally call the listing presentation. And it is a slide deck that we've built. It is a Frankenstein of my listing presentation, your listing presentation, which we've gotten from our coaches and then made our own. And now we've mashed it together, and it's fantastic. And if we went through the entire thing, it would probably take us 20 to 30 minutes to do.
Right.
And I don't think it should be any shorter, and I don't think it should be any longer than that. 20 to 30 minutes is the average attention span.
Right.
And when you hear this, we have a lot of new agents that want to skip around. And we've designed this appointment in a way that the first step is a conversation.
Right.
But depending on the conversation, you need an emotional break from that because you're talking, you're sharing, you're thinking, you're asking questions. The home inspection is designed to give you that break and to build even more trust and rapport. Then you come back to a presentation where you're once again building rapport and trust with them and engaging them in the presentation.
Right.
This is not your time to stand in front of a podium and lecture at them. This is a collaborative, engaging presentation where you're asking questions, you're getting feedback, and you're doing it in a way that leads them down the path you want them.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're increasing the rapport because you've built it already. So you're strengthening your rapport, and you're also continuing to solidify your professionalism.
Yeah.
Building their confidence and their trust in you through this presentation. Like you said, 20, 30 minutes. Like that's all it should take. But it can't be skipped. And one thing that's important for agents to know is when you have a really good marketing proposal, like we call ours, so they may call theirs a listing presentation, but same thing. Like if you have a good presentation, that presentation should educate. And so down the road, what we have experienced is when we don't do this presentation, there's questions that would have been answered in the presentation had we have done it, but now we're dealing with frustration down the road, right? And we have to be mindful that we're trying to create a really good experience for these people.
Yeah.
The more we can give them up front, the better we can educate them, set the expectations so that they know what to expect during the process, the better their experience is going to be. So we go into things like, hey, this is, what we're going to do for photos. This is what we're going to do for advertising. This is what's going to happen. This is how showings are going to work, right? This is what the lockbox looks like. I mean, it sounds rudimentary or whatever that word is. It sounds silly, right? But it's so important.
Well, this again is going back to I'm not actually at this point. So to take even a further 10,000 foot view away from this for a second, I win probably 90% of my listings during the conversation.
Right.
Normally, I have had listing presentations or appointments, not just a presentation, the whole appointment go 3 to 3.5 hours. But that is only because the conversation at the beginning that I normally slot 10 to 15 minutes for went for an hour and a half.
Right.
And I got such a good conversation and so much good information, I probably could have skipped everything else.
Yeah.
And they would have signed right there. But I don't do that unless it's an extreme case.
Right.
But I don't do that because, like you said, the presentation is designed almost like a client onboarding.
Yes.
It answers almost all of their questions before they even have them.
Right. Right. 100%, man.
And another, again, ninja hack here is if your marketing proposal or listing presentation doesn't already speak to the fact of why you're not going to lower your commission, that's why you're getting those questions.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's an objection handler before you even get the objections.
100%.
Definitely. And then another thing too with that is people will make decisions with their emotions,
Yeah, all the time.
right? Like they'll think, with reasoning and data, like, but what makes them move is the emotion.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're spending that time talking to them, getting to know them, getting to know their situation, building trust, building rapport, well, when it comes time for them to make that decision, it's a much easier decision. Like, yeah, I trust this person.
Right.
I trust this person, and that is what you have to have.
Mm-hmm.
More times than not, you have to establish that trust for them to hire you.
Yeah. Yeah. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up. You may still get the listing signed, but I would venture to say most of your expireds or your cancels happen because the seller didn't trust you.
Yeah.
They didn't trust that you had their best interest at heart. So when you propose the price decrease, they think you're just trying to get a quick sale.
Mm-hmm.
They don't trust your reasoning behind it. So I think delivering this in the proper way is 100% critical to getting this right.
Absolutely. There's a quote. I think this was George Washington. It may have been Abraham Lincoln. It's somebody pretty old. But the quote was, hey, if I have 5 hours to chop down a tree, I'm going to spend the first 4 sharpening my axe.
Mm-hmm.
Preparation.
Yeah.
Preparation is absolutely freaking key to your success in this. And this is planning before this event ever even transpires.
Yeah. And, to speak about that, let me ask you, when was the first time you gave a listing presentation? Was it in front of the client or was it practice beforehand?
Dude, I probably did like a few hundred of them in my closet. That's really where I would go. I would go into my freaking closet, man, and I would just shadow box listing presentations, man, and just record it and say, okay, well, where was that good? Where was that bad? And sometimes I would just segment it. Hey, I'm just going to do this segment right here. Yeah. Until I can say this with my eyes closed, not looking at anything, I'm gonna keep doing it. Keep practicing. So like hundreds of times before I actually really got into the game.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you're saying that because I think so many people see such a natural presentation happen and they think, oh, he's just really good at that. Well, I wasn't the first time.
No.
And if you're practicing in front of your clients, or I should say my clients, because I'm going to win that if you're practicing right in front of them. I did the same thing. I'm really glad you mentioned recording as well, because that's something I did. And, I've always heard, professional athletes, do you think that you would trust a professional athlete that didn't ever watch game film?
No.
Like you should do it yourself.
Yeah.
The easiest, best way to get better is look into it. You don't ever have to share these things, but just record yourself, watch it back, take notes, get better.
Yeah. Focus
over
on
and
growth.
over and over and over.
Yeah. Focus on growth. Mm-hmm. Focus on learning. And I want to offer everybody listening, we do have a listing mastery course. And what I want to offer them is there's a free portion of this course that is the preparation. It's module number 1. And we walk through all the steps that we talked about here in this listing module course, listing mastery course. But I want to offer you guys listening module number 1, and that's on how you prepare for the listing. It's going to walk you through all of the steps you would need to take, all the information you'll need to gather, where you need to gather it from, and how to really prepare properly to be able to win at that listing appointment. And then again, we're going to create another episode here where we're going to go over the 5 easiest ways to actually get listing appointments that you can go out and show what you've learned.
Yes. Yeah, because you can't conduct listing appointments unless you actually get leads.
Yeah. That's a critical step that we didn't talk about here, but we will talk about that. Kyle, any last words for our listeners who are thinking about becoming better listing agents?
Yeah, number one is really just you can do this.
You can.
If you have your real estate license, you can do this. Mm-hmm. You took the courses, you passed the test, you have the skills inside of you, but it takes practice.
Right.
I think it's very easy to look at someone who's doing this already and want to skip straight to that level and forget the years of hard work that were in between those 2 steps. The first time you do this, you're going to suck. Mm-hmm. That's okay. The next time you'll be a little bit better and a little bit better. So keep practicing and keep refining. Every single time I close a listing, there's a sit rep. Mm-hmm. How did I do?
Yep.
What could be better? Where did I screw up? And, sometimes I make the same mistakes. I try not to do that twice, but, you learn. You learn every single time. And just so stick with it. You can do this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would add to that to say that not only can you do it, you're capable of doing it, you've passed your license, but don't skip steps.
Yeah.
Do not skip steps. It's like baking a cake. Forget the eggs, your cake's going to taste like shit, right? It's the same thing here. If you skipped a step for the sake of speed, I want to hurry up and get there. There's no shortcut. The only shortcut is more work, right? More practice, more effort. Don't skip the steps. You're shorting yourself. You're shorting your clients. You're shorting your business. You're shorting the people in your life that depend on you to have success. So take that shit seriously. Focus on mastering every one of these steps like a professional. Going back to the beginning, be that professional. Don't wing it. Don't be average. If you can rise above the 87% that are average and below, you can be in that top even 5% that are doing 80% of the business.
Yeah. We spoke last episode all about time management. And I will tell you, if you don't have listings, you don't have clients at the moment, what are you doing with your day? You should be practicing.
Absolutely.
Practice until you have the clients.
Absolutely. And if there's anything that we can do to help you with that, feel free to reach out. That is exactly what we're here for, to help you grow in your real estate business in any way we can. I'm Jeremy Smith. This is Kyle Lindsay, and I believe this is a wrap. How do you feel?
Great episode.
All right, guys. Enjoy it. We'll see you next one. Peace.